Welcome to Parev TV. We are honored to be joined by a lawyer, a good friend, Vartan Asatrian. He's also a professor of political science, very knowledgeable of Armenia, Armenian history, and if I'm not mistaken, he was born in Armenia, right, Vartan?
Yes, thank you for
Yes.
inviting me on the show. I was born in
Please, Vartan.
Yerevan, Armenia, for the record.
Yes. Vartan, let us get with the heavy stuff. Can
Sure.
Russia bring this war to an end? We are talking about the Armenian Azeri war. Can Russia bring this war to an end?
That's a good question. It's a delicate question. Russia, I think, has reached out to Turkey. Their relations, I think, have gotten better over the years. And I think they've reached out to have Turkey engage in what's called a ceasefire or stop the fighting between Azerbaijan and Armenia. That's what I've been hearing from the diplomatic circles. So they are trying to reach out, and they can help. But Russia always operates within their own self-interest first. Is it in their self-interest to have a regional war between Azerbaijan and Armenia? I would say no. Is it in their best interest to show their sphere of influence that this is in their backyard and they could basically stop this type of major conflict to get bigger and to engage in as basically a higher statesman in the area and to stop the fighting, which I think needs to be done in myself. So yes, the answer in short is I think Russia can do it. Will they do it is a different story. I always analyze Russia from the standpoint of their self-interest, and it probably is in their self-interest to seem like the power player in that region and not concede to Turkey as being a power player in that region.
I do not know that many countries who do not work in their self-interest, Vartan. But is Turkey taking advantage? You know, recently Russia was at war with Ukraine, and they did not deliver as best as they could, or we thought they would. And is Turkey taking advantage of maybe a weakness on the Russian part?
Yeah, I mean, Turkey's taking advantage of the weakness of a lot of things. They're also engaging this type of hostility amidst a COVID-19 global pandemic. I don't think that's by accident. I think there's a U.S. election coming on, which there's a lot of attention on, which could be monumental to the United States. There's a lot of distractions out there, and I think they want to engage in this type of unrepentant hostility and aggression in this time period. So I think the timing is probably done deliberately because there's so much global distraction right now. So I do think Turkey's taking advantage of the situation. And I think there's been some extremely caustic language coming from Erdogan that should make every Armenian have chills down their back. I don't know if he verbally said that he wanted to finish the Armenian genocide. I think he insinuated that he wanted to do it. And I know there was a prior president that did say they wanted to teach Armenians the lessons of 1915, which we all know is the Armenian genocide. So the global Armenian community should take notice of what's really going on. I think this is very serious. I don't think this is a mere skirmish that's going to stop and move on and go back and forth. I think this is a little bit more serious. And, you know, my antennas are up. I think it's a very potentially existential threat to Armenia's existence.
You know, coming back to Turkey with Syria, then Libya, the Mediterranean, and now Armenia, then mercenaries. How do you account for all these unacceptable policies of Turkey?
I think Erdogan is engaging in an expansionist and adventurous type military. And he's doing it and he's getting away with it. And I think there's also another country involved there is Iraq. And there's the Turkmen in Iraq that, quite frankly, I think there's 1 million Turkmen in Iraq that are very close to Turkey. And he is trying to expand his territorial presence all throughout the Middle East. Because in my mind, and I'm not a mind reader, Erdogan wants to be the #1 player in the Middle East. They definitely have the most powerful military in the Middle East and probably the 9th strongest military in the world. So they're flexing their muscles, and there is no moral compass there. They're just might is right, and that's what he's doing right now. there's no check on Erdogan at this point.
How concerned are you with a larger scale or spread or escalation of this war between Armenia and Azerbaijan, which Turkey is also taking part in it? We heard about F-16, 17 shooting down the Armenian Su-15. What do you make out of Turkey's involvement, and how concerned are you with the escalation of war?
Well, I look at it simply. Violence is something that cannot be controlled. Once violence starts, it begets other violence, and there's other unforeseeable situations. Yes, there's a broadening of the regional war, but we don't know who's going to get involved in that war and why. And it's a very dangerous game that Turkey's playing, because people think that they can control these conflicts regionally, but if they get broader and broader and there are enormous amount of casualties, it could turn into a major regional war, if not a world war. So I am concerned about that. And I think that the consequences are unclear because, like I said, violence and war, it's not a clean business. It's a dirty business. There's a lot of things that happens in the fog of war. And I think there's a lot of unanticipated consequences that could flow from it. It's still early right now to find out what it is.
Vartan, you, as I said, you are a professor of political science and you know the American history and the Constitution and the legal aspects. The question of territorial integrity versus self-determination.
Okay, well, that's a good question. It's a very academic question. I appreciate it. Self-determination has worked, and it to me comports with human nature in a lot of ways. Territorial integrity is something in the eyes of the beholder. I mean, whose territory are we talking about? Whose historical territory are we talking about? And who claims that territory? And was that territory taking away from them by, let's say, in this case, Stalin, in order to conquer and divide that area? So self-determination is always a great thing for any nation. It shows the human spirit and the willingness to survive at all costs. Armenia is pretty much a beacon of the idea of self-determination and the survival over thousands of years. Territorial integrity is a little more complicated because over the years, these territories have been conquered by many people, and they've been stolen or taken away from certain groups, and now they have a right to claim those territories, quite frankly. But it could be used and manipulated by leaders. This is our territory. It belongs to us, therefore it's justified engaging in an enormous amount of violence and death and bloodshed. So that one's a little more trickier because it can be manipulated by politics and politicians.
You know, whenever there is a world crisis, we look at America, we look at Russia as superpowers who can, more or less bring sense to these wars or skirmishes. America has adopted more of a backseat policy lately. And how has that affected American policy or even the war in Armenia, Azerbaijan? What do we expect? Will we expect any changes after the election or before election? What is the situation there?
Well, I think there's a causal connection between the vacuum of power and basically ceding the leader of the free world, as you would call it, to other leaders. Now, whenever there's a vacuum of power, someone tries to take that power for themselves. I don't think there's going to be one global power, but I think since since the U.S. is retreating from this leader of the free world symbol or identity, other regional powers are trying to take that mantle away from them. I think Turkey's one of them. I think Russia's another. I think China's also another. That's the danger that there's the conflict in foreign policy. Should you stay isolationist or should you get involved in global events? The danger of not intervening in these events, there's an absence of a U.S. voice, as far as I know, in this conflict, and it's probably going to create more and more of a problem.
Tell me about the situation in Armenia as you see it today. What is your take of this situation in Armenia?
I think it's sad on the one hand. On the other hand, I think the people are extremely nervous. I think they do think, and without saying it over, there's an existential threat to their existence.
Mm,
I also think that the Armenian people are very tough people. They're very
mm.
resilient, and they're not going to back down. They are very tough people. I came from Yerevan, and they're also very proud. Unfortunately, we're dealing with, and Armenia is a classic David versus Goliath. It's a biblical story. We are always dealing with powers and numbers that are always greater than us. So I think internally, the people and their leadership are going to be tolerant for a while. But if they see, I'm talking about the population, the general population, if they see any weakness, if anybody blinks or backs down, we have a major problem as far as the leadership
Absolutely.
is concerned.
So
Any
true.
any any type of indication that we will concede, because we understand historically as a people, it's in our blood, it's in our ethnicity. We understand fights. We understand fights in the school ground. You never concede to bullies. You never do, and because they only bully you more. And I think this is a situation of the bullies trying to frighten us, trying to scare us. And if we show any sign of weakness or fear, they will trounce. They will pounce on us. But unfortunately, they're messing with the wrong people. I know the Armenian people. They don't back down. They just don't. They're fighters.
You
Sorry,
know,
that's my.
there's so much to talk about. And my question to you is, as you wrap up, what should we concentrate on? I'm sure you're thinking of many, many things, but what should be the concentration of the Armenian nation that has been described as we in the diaspora in Armenia and Artsakh were described as people at war, very united. We stand as an army, and you are a soldier at this very moment. I keep saying this to every person I talk to. We are soldiers in the diaspora standing by Armenia. What is your message? What should we do?
Well, before I say that, I know that there are people right now lining up in Los Angeles and other cities in the United States that want to go to Armenia and volunteer and fight.
Hmm.
That's one. Two, I think that the diaspora has to communicate with Armenia itself and use and lend all of our talents, sometimes funding and guidance to Armenia right now. They need it because they are being outnumbered. And, we need to look at the numbers as far as military power, alliances. We are up against a lot of things. But one thing we do have is the diaspora, and we have Armenia. And I think when I hear about young people wanting to go to Armenia and fight for Armenia right now, getting on a plane from somewhere in Burbank to go to Armenia, I'm kind of inspired by that because Armenian identity is still strong, still powerful. I don't know if I answered your question, but I listen. I don't think bloodshed is the right idea. But if you get attacked, you have a right to self-determination. You have a right to self-defense. And it does clear that the aggressors here, they want a reaction from the Armenians. And I think they want to see who our allies are and who's part of the situation or not. And I think there's a lot of people on the ground right now, observers. I don't think Azerbaijan's allowing those observers to engage in what's called observations. There's probably a reason why. And the Armenians are allowing the observers to see what's going on. And, those, Europe needs to stand up too. I need the European Union. I'm very proud that France has said something. I think the UK needs to speak up. I think Germany needs to speak up. And I think they need to say, listen, this is NATO. Turkey's a NATO country. I'm not worried about Azerbaijan. Turkey's the problem here.
Absolutely.
And if they don't put enough pressure on Turkey, then you know what? If they don't care about Armenia, which they may not, they should look at themselves because they could be the next victim of a very, very aggressive leader in Turkey who's not afraid of going into Iraq, going into Syria, going to other countries. He's clearly trying to create a larger empire, in my opinion. He needs to be stopped. I think Europe can do it, but they just need to have the resolve to do it.
Vartan Asatrian, a good friend. Thank you for your insightful comments, and be well.
Well, you're a great friend and always inviting me, and thank you so much. I hope I was helpful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.